Hardy souls who came out in this unusual weather for us on the coast. I personally love cold weather, but this is even pushing the edge of my comfort zone. But thank you for being here. I hereby call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with us at this annual parish meeting. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and your glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. It has all the news you could ever want to know about St. Paul's in one place for the year. The 2023 minutes of the annual meeting are in there. Are there any corrections or additions or deletions to those minutes? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you. Did you see that? Is there a second? Second? All right. All in favor of approving the minutes for the meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Minutes are approved. Thank you. Jane.
Gracious. Good morning. Now it is time to elect the new vestry members. And so to remind us of what, there is an oath that we have to take as voting members. It's actually on the sheet that's at the back of the church, but to remind you, it says, I do hereby consent to be governed by the Constitution and canons of the church as set forth in and by the General Convention of the Episcopal Church and by the Constitution and canons of the Diocese of East Carolina. So now we will, the slate of candidates, and when I call your name, just stand. Marshall Beach. Jean Kiso. Lauren Michaels. And Cole Witt. Thank you for your willingness to serve. There have not been any additional nominations for additional candidates. So, are there any from the floor? No? Well, then, shall we just vote by affirmation of this slate of 4 people who are willing to serve? So moved. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Welcome to the vestry. We appreciate very much your willingness to serve. The next thing we're going to do is look at these amendments to the bylaws, which you've had. They went out, and as we said, they are intended to do 2 things. There's some cleanup kinds of things in there in terms of just the little things, like I would call them almost cleanup or housekeeping. But the significant change is the way that we nominate people for the vestry, to change it so that instead of guaranteeing that there's sort of a contested election, which many parishes have found leads to hurt feelings and people kind of getting their nose, understandably getting their nose bent out of joint because they don't get elected, and then they're like, well, why did you want me to do it in the first place? Rather than have that situation, just nominate the number of people for the positions that we have, which is essentially what we've done the past couple of years, but we need to change the bylaws to reflect that. So if we can, but we need the vestry approved the adoption of those changes to the bylaws, and we need at the annual meeting for you all as the congregation to vote on that proposed change. So can I have a motion to adopt those changes to the bylaws? So moved. Any second? Can we vote by hands again and voice as to whether we can approve those changes to the bylaws? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Those changes have passed, so that we now have those new bylaws. So the next thing that happens is Charles will present the budget.
Before we talk about 24, let me just make a couple of comments about 23. Thanks to you all in your giving, we were able to fund the budget for 23 and meet all of our expenses, even with some unplanned for repair work that had to be done to some of our old systems. We were still able to come up at the end of the year pretty much in line with what our budget for the year had been. And this is thanks to you. In your booklet, you have a copy of a narrative budget, which we've done for a number of years. And I just want to remind you that if you want a line-by-line copy of the budget, it is available for you in the church office. All you have to do is go in and request it, and it will give you all the details, as detailed as you want to get in the budget. Again, thanks to you and your generous giving, our 24 budget is funded. It's up from 23. The giving is up, and as you can imagine, the expenses are up. Pretty much same expenses we all deal with in our homes. The cost of insurance is up. Repairs are up. And in doing the budget committee, first of all, we made appropriate adjustments to the clergy and the staff salaries. We increased the maintenance expense. These are just some of the main items that we looked at and made changes to. And we were able to increase our outside giving. We feel that we have a very financially sound budget for this year. And I'd like to thank Jane Gordon, Joe Eustack, Bob Ivy, Mary Dwayne Hale, and of course Tammy for their help in preparing this budget. Don't forget that you can get your copies of the line item budget from the office. Are there any questions or concerns about the finances? Thank you.
He won't toot his own horn, but I'll toot the horn for him. Charles is here weekly, but more importantly, he has wisdom that he has carried as years of being treasurer, but more importantly, as a parishioner and as a businessman. Without him, I don't think we would be as successful as we are at keeping a close eye on everything, and he is our go-to person for many things, but he's here to make sure our books are balanced. He's here to make sure that nobody's walking off with anything. He's here to work with our auditor. So it's one of those unseen things that goes on in the life of a parish, and I'd just like to give Charles a big round of applause.
5 years ago, we called the Reverend Tambry Elizabeth Lee to be our new rector. And in so many ways, the last 5 years have been extraordinary. And so I want to reflect not just on the past year, but on these last 5 years. In 2019, we spent time getting to know Tammy, and she got to know us. Remember when we had to wear those name tags? Yeah. Fortunately, we don't have to do that anymore, although perhaps sometimes we should. We began to enjoy Tammy's inspiring, thought-provoking sermons. We learned to appreciate her leadership and her loving pastoral care. We felt a new energy here at St. Paul's, and we were excited to have Tammy as our rector. Then, in March 2020, the whole world changed. We found ourselves in the middle of a global pandemic, which caused fear, uncertainty, and dramatically altered daily life for all of us. Almost overnight, we were no longer able to gather in person to worship or to do any of the other things that were so special to us in our life at St. Paul's. Tammy, Mary Dwayne, Linda Lawton, the vestry, and a few other people quickly pivoted to online worship using nothing but an iPhone and the internet. We were not permitted to gather in person for a very long time. And I remember my son Chris coming home to tell me that the police had showed up here one day to count the number of people that were in the building when they were filming the service. I mean, we can all remember how serious and scary things were back then. But under Tammy's leadership and the tireless work of others, we learned that worship could continue, albeit in a very different way. We learned that we could reach people we had never reached before because our services were available on the internet. We continued to hear powerful sermons from our rector, and Linda Lawton and the choir continued to inspire us with their beautiful music. Baking for Good was born, and we began a weekly food drive. Unable to hold the Harvest Bazaar in person, the ECW developed an online bazaar that was hugely successful. And we remained faithful and generous in our financial giving, and our finances remained stable and strong. And by being careful and respectful of one another, we navigated through the pandemic without spreading COVID through this congregation. In spring 2021, we began to gather in person again. First, having services only outdoors. We still wore masks, kept our distance from one another. We were still afraid to sing, to shake hands, or hug, or gather indoors. But we came back. Soon, we began to hold our services indoors again. First, we still kept our distance and wore our masks, and we still didn't have Sunday school or coffee hour. And under Tammy's leadership, the vestry considered carefully each step toward returning to normal. Well, we're now once again able to worship, fellowship, and minister to our community without restrictions. We have kept in place and built upon many of the things we began during the pandemic. Live streaming our services is now an essential part of our ministry, and we've installed professional equipment to support this work. Baking for Good and the weekly food drive have continued. The Harvest Bazaar is now conducted both online and in person. Our membership and Sunday attendance have increased steadily over the last few years, and we've remained generous and faithful in our financial giving. Ashley Simpson came on board in summer 2022 as a full-time associate, and she's revitalized and grown our children's and youth programs. Matt Hill came on board as music director and has brought new energy, expanded the choir, and developed the Coleman St. Paul's Music Scholarship Program for high school and college students. Over the past year, we've enjoyed many opportunities for fellowship, whether through coffee hour, our recent newcomers party, our potluck suppers, and other avenues. We have many Sunday school offerings and special programs for Lent. We've hosted concerts at St. Paul's and have enjoyed extraordinary music during our services. We packed hundreds of meals for Rise Against Hunger, and we sent our youth to Glory Ridge once again to minister to the people of Madison County. Every week, 5 Loaves Ministry serves dinner to those in need. We hosted a trunk or treat and welcomed many people from the local community to have a little Halloween fun with us. We enjoyed a wonderful time with Vacation Bible School, and we hosted lunch for the Old Homes Tour and opened the church for the Christmas Candlelight Tour. We even have yoga. In the coming year, we anticipate building on all these programs to allow us to continue to grow together as a church community and also to enable us to reach out to minister to the broader community of Beaufort and beyond. We're excited about what we're building and doing here at St. Paul's, and we're grateful for the dedication of Tammy, Ashley, and Matt. We're also grateful for the ways you have returned to full life here at St. Paul's, and we hope that you will continue to increase your participation and involvement in all aspects of our parish life. Thanks.
This started this morning, by the way, this popping, and I have now determined, I think it is there's a switch in the floor maybe. One of the things that you also don't know is we have Glenn Dunn in the back, he's the person that's sitting back there, probably his mind going like, why is that doing that? And as soon as the service is over, he will be talking to me about the ways we're going to fix that. Glenn was also instrumental, has been since I've been here, in making sure that we can hear one another, we can see one another, and that our equipment works so that we can hear and see one another with our community outside of here. So thank you, Glenn. Vocation is from the Latin word vocare, which means to call or to summons. In the church, we use that term to refer to God calling. The theologian Frederick Buechner said it best: the place God calls you in this world is where your deep desire or gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. 5 years ago, I sat in a conference room in Indianapolis, crafting a letter accepting your call as rector and resigning my post as chaplain and university priest. Serendipitously, the conference I was attending was for grantees of the Lilly Foundation, who are all engaged in forming programs and shaping souls around vocation. It never occurred to me that the call being shaped was my own. What did occur, indeed what has been so life-giving since, was how this church could be the intersection of God's deep desire and the world's deep hunger meeting in all of our lives. As St. Paul's prepares to apply for a Lilly grant focusing in 2025 on congregational renewal and vocation, I stand in awe of what has transpired here since 2019, how we've lived out our vocation as a parish. 55,000 plus items to Martha's Mission in 3 years, all arriving in golf carts, on bicycles, and in the back seats of cars, filled with everything from laundry soap to applesauce and spiral hams. Thousands of rolls, granola, shortbread cookies, scones, tarts, and fig cakes, abounding at the farmers market through Baking for Good, whose proceeds all go to feeding the hungry in Carteret County. 17,500 meals delivered or served through Meals on Wheels, the recently hospitalized or bereaved and Five Loaves Mission, which celebrates 17 years in Beaufort this year. The largest volunteer contingent at Broad Street Clinic, with 18 hardy souls from St. Paul serving as physicians and nurse practitioners, board members, clinical and technical support. At the board meeting last week, they looked at me and said, if we didn't have the people of St. Paul's, I'm not sure we could function. Our live streaming ministry is reaching 200 or more people each Sunday service, and for some services, over 1,500 people. Our YouTube channel is up 20% in the past year, in large part because our Friday emails are now video emails. The single most watched event was the Good Friday service and a Friday email in October. Charles has mentioned this, but your faithful financial stewardship has made possible the upkeep of historical buildings in an unforgiving climate where there is always something to be repaired, refurbished, or replaced. It has supported technological capabilities that serve the unchurched and the homebound. It serves security protocols that keep us safe, sacramental ministry that touches us in the transition points of our lives, weekly worship that strengthens us for the journey, formation for all ages, and a staff that makes this happen. Both the number of pledges and the amounts have increased sufficiently to allow for the work of ministry to continue unabated, which stands in stark contrast to other churches in our denomination. We gave to outreach and mission through our parish-designated ministries, discretionary, scholarships, and diocesan ministries over $155,000. If the standard biblical tithe is 10%, St. Paul's has given 27% of its budgeted income to outreach. ECW continues to amaze with its online bazaar. Each year we say the same thing. This was the best bazaar ever, and we raised the most money ever for our community ministries. And it's true. Youth ministry is changing at St. Paul's, responding to generational shifts and adapting with creativity new models of formation and fellowship, while holding fast to Glory Ridge as a standing intergenerational ministry. As we speak, programs to strengthen our young families are being discussed and developed. Our music program has grown, our choir, and expanded in ways the community outside of us is noticing too, including our partnership with the American Music Festival. We all appreciate those gorgeous hymn descants and anthems, and our Coleman scholars who are in their second year of service. Your vestry at its summer retreat did a mutual ministry review, which was very encouraging and empowering. We discerned that we were called to reach out in fellowship and welcome to our neighbors, nurture men's ministry and formation, and further develop our communications. We began Friday video messages, added a daily meditation on Facebook and Instagram during Advent, and will continue to discern new ways of connecting. A men's retreat is being planned for later this spring, summer with the Reverend Caleb Lee, who's rector at St. Paul's in Wilmington and a former associate here. Mary Dwayne Hale has stepped into the role of parish administrator as a volunteer with a grace that is unmatched. Her knowledge of the parish, accounting and bookkeeping background, and her kindness has been a gift without price. We are so grateful for her gift of countless hours among us each week. Thank you, Mary Dwayne. I have received over 6,000 emails this year, 100 plus daily text, 10 to 12 phone calls a day, greeting 130 to 150 people face-to-face each week at the church door and coffee hour, which leads to an average of 16 people face-to-face each day through meetings, appointments, hospital and home visits, all working to create life together. While it can be overwhelming, it's also a deep privilege to be among you as one who serves. I know I don't always get it right, but I do my best, as I know you do. My favorite line in the institution of a rector is, "Tend the flock of Christ, which is your charge." The year ahead will bring a planned restoration and refurbishment of the church, including maintenance that has emerged due to the age of the building. We are going to paint the outside of the church, working on the floors, laying new carpet to replace what is buckling and is a trip hazard. You might want to know that we're adding seat cushions made especially by a company that specializes in historic buildings, and upgrading our sound and lighting systems. We're also focusing on beautifying the columbarium and the courtyard. New adult formation and education opportunities, including a series on creativity, imagination, and the spiritual life, are forthcoming. There will be an election of a new presiding bishop at the church's general convention in Kentucky, where I serve as a deputy from this diocese and on a legislative committee to rework our disciplinary canons. And hopefully, it will bring more moments like young Edward searching in the sanctuary during the Christmas pageant for his own light to carry into the world. The children singing "Let Us Break Bread Together" on our knees at Bible school. The joy of hearing when the saints go marching in at a funeral. A Project Christmas Cheer room overflowing with the generosity of your gifts for those in need. Hearing Thomas, a resident of our local group home, say at a 5 Loaves meal, "You know who I am." The great chili cook-off filling the parish hall with hungry souls and hearty spirits. Trunk or treating reaching more strangers than friends. The bishop's annual visitation for confirmation and reception in June. Eyes upturned and hands outstretched at the communion rail that has held the hopes and the sorrows of the good people of St. Paul since 1867. Thank you for taking your vocation as children of God seriously. Here's to the journey of finding where our deep gladness and the world's deep hunger continue to meet. I'd like to take the opportunity now to thank our outgoing vestry members. Joe Ustack. Joe, if you'll stand. Penny Lloyd Baldridge. Thank you. Jane Gordon and Amanda Shoden. Thank you all for your continued work among us, and we hope that even though you're going off the vestry, just remember we know where you live. Thank you. I have to tell you, too, that the good news is that Jane is not going off the vestry. She is going to fulfill an open position on the vestry, so she'll continue for another year. So we are grateful to have Jane with us for another year. All right, the other thing I just realized I had a little boo-boo in my report when I said that all of our giving, $155,000 of it was budgeted. It's not all budgeted. That's what we've also given outside when we've supported our parish-supported ministries. We actually do give a good chunk to outreach, but I was surprised, Mary Dwayne and I were talking about it last week, at how much we actually give away. And we just sat down one afternoon and just started calculating it, and it was really pretty extraordinary. So I wanted you to know that. Any questions? Concerns? Again, I'd like to say thank you for coming out in this frigid Arctic weather. We are grateful for your presence. And now we're going to wrap this all up by singing the doxology. And I'll tell you what page it's on. What? 380, last verse. If you could all stand as you are able. That's the floor. Thank you. Go in peace.